Depth of field is the section of your image that's in focus. This is determined by your distance to the subject as well as your f-stop. Right now, my focus point is set right there. So you'll see the girl is in focus. My f-stop or my aperture is set at f2.8. f2.8 is a very wide aperture. What that means is it's open wide to allow a lot of light to come in. Now, by allowing a lot of light to come in and having such a wide open aperture, it also means that I'm going to have a very shallow depth of field. So you'll see that she is in focus, but 1/3 in front of her, which is this guy, he's out of focus. This guy is 1/3 behind. This guy here is 2/3 behind. So whilst she's in focus, everybody else is out of focus. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my f-stop and close my aperture. Two things are going to happen. Number one, the whole scene is going to get darker, but you'll start to see that everybody else in my scene, this guy will start to come into focus first. Everything else in my scene will start to sharpen up. So right now I'm going to go from f2.8 to 3.5, 5, 6, f8, and you'll see that as I've gone from 2.8 to f8, the whole scene has become darker. So just so we can video this, I'm going to slow my shutter speed down so it's going to compensate for that reduction in light from the closing of my aperture. So I'm going to go from 1/1000th of a second down to 250, 160. So I've gone from 1/1000th of a second to 1/60th of a second at f8 to compensate for that closing of that aperture. And now you'll see, just go by from f2.8 to f8, that not only is she in focus, but he's come into focus, and so has this guy. And now this guy here has got a little bit more definition. Now let's keep going. So we're at f8. Let's now go to f9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 16. Let's slow down the shutter to compensate. 125, 80, 60. Now, she's my focal point, or she's in my hyperfocal point, which means that that is where the best focus is. 1/3 behind is in focus. 1/3 is in front, is also in focus at f16. If I keep going to go to say f32, everything is in focus, but because we're videoing, I can't slow my shutter speed any lower, right? So let's just go back down to f20 just so we can see, but how adjusting my aperture or my f-stop has increased my focus but taken away the light. So like we showed you earlier with the tap principle, the longer you keep that shutter open, the more light you're going to get. The smaller your aperture ring is, the less light you're going to allow into your camera. And consequently, this is what happens with your depth of field. So what you want to do is work out what you're trying to keep in focus. So for example, if I was taking a photo of this and I just wanted her to get that, be that really sharp part of my image, I would set my f-stop to f2.8, so she's nice and sharp, and I'd have my shutter speed at 800th of a second. So now she's my focal point, and then 1/3 in front and 2/3 behind is completely out of focus.